Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again, and we're now going to talk about Warner Brothers and the recent huge announcement that a huge slate of their big event movies scheduled for 2021 will be released simultaneously in both theatres and the HBO Max streaming platform. This is following the recent news that the superhero sequel Wonder Woman 1984 would be the first prolific event movie from Warner Brothers to be released simultaneously in HBO Max and theatres as well. Now, as we all know, with Wonder Woman, it will be released a week earlier internationally in theatres first, before going ahead and being released in US cinemas and the HBO Max streaming platform. And I believe this will be the same strategy adopted for these movies in 2021. Now, to be clear, what needs to be understood is that when they open on the HBO Max streaming platform, it will only be for 1 month only, along with cinemas. And then after that monthly period, the movies will then revert back to being released on theatres only. Now, an actual trailer was released online from Warner Brothers making this huge announcement, and I'll provide the link for that in my description as well. And just like the Wonder Woman 1984 release, there will be no additional price like what Disney Plus initiated for the Mulan live action remake, where there was a $30 premium price that you had to pay along with subscribing to the service. That won't be the case with these movies either. It'll be the same release schedule, 1 month only on HBO Max, along with cinemas, and then after that it will be cinemas only. Now, the justification that was given is that Warner Brothers can no longer afford to have these big event movies constantly on delay because of the COVID outbreak, and at this stage we're still none the wiser as to when these movies will be released theatrically. Warner Brothers at this point feels that they will be able to recoup back the money if they release these movies on the streaming platform as well. So for anybody who doesn't go and watch them in the cinemas, because these are event movies and there's hype and anticipation about them, then everybody will rush to pay the subscription fees towards the HBO Max, which at this stage still remains at $15 per month. So they're hoping to recoup that money back and attract a huge amount of subscribers in the process. Now, the huge slate of movies that will be on this release schedule includes the likes of Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, The Suicide Squad, the sequel to the 2017 film, Dune, Matrix 4, Tom and Jerry, The Conjuring, the Denzel Washington movie, The Little Things, amongst other movies. So that's quite a massive slate of films, and initially everybody, when they talked about this initiative that was being actioned first by Disney Plus with Mulan and Wonder Woman with 1984, a lot of people stated that these were just one-offs, kind of trial experiments, just to kind of dip their feet into the water of putting these movies on a streaming platform just to see what would happen. Now, as I did a previous video with the Wonder Woman 1984 announcement, I raised my concern because these are never just one-offs. You know, when they make these initiatives, these are something that were well into the planning process months before they took place. Now, we've always debated for, I think, months and many years about the concept of movies eventually going direct to the consumer on online platform, and we always decided, I think, that that would be years away. This is pre-COVID stages, right? Because the potential money that you make theatrically is just too big in order for them to dismiss and hope that the subscriber base would make up that profit levels. This is why I've never believed that movies should go on streaming prior to this pandemic stage that we're in now, because you just lose out on all that potential profit, right? Particularly when you look at the big event movies. So when we take Wonder Woman 1984, as I mentioned in the previous video, the first one made over 828 million, so they were hoping that would make 1 billion at the box office. So all of that potential revenue and profit you're losing by going ahead with streaming. That's why I've never been enthusiastic about it. And yes, as a kind of big fan of movies, I still do enjoy the theatrical experience. Watching these big event movies on the big screen still has a very big appeal for me, even though I do understand the convenience of being able to watch it in your own home and not having to spend the extra cost of traveling or food or drink or accounting for any partners or family additional members that you bring along with you. So I do understand that, but I just think in this case here, a couple of big concerns that I have, and one is that it always starts as a one-off, but then what will lead to it going ahead into the future? And what if HBO Max experiences a huge spike in subscribers, right? And they start making money, then it won't stop at the $15 per month. They're going to make every opportunity they can to potentially increase that price so they can therefore increase their revenue, particularly when a lot of these movies would have been costing around 150 to 200 million. They're going to look at as many ways possible to maximize their revenue stream. That's the whole point of these streaming platforms, right? So that's my worry, is that their future escalating costs. A move like this will eventually destroy the theatres, right? Because if you release it simultaneously with theatres, then people of course are going to choose to stay at home and watch these movies, because as I mentioned, it's more convenient for them in the long run to just sit at home. So you will essentially destroy the theatres. You know, if it was one movie, fine, but when you have a whole host of major box office movies intended for 2021 all going to streaming, even if it's for 1 month, it still preconditions the audience to get them used now to just getting these movies on streaming. So when you eventually open theatres up again, people will prefer to just take the streaming option because you've now made it available to them. And my big concern is that if theatres do eventually become obsolete, then the only alternative that we have to watch these movies will be on streaming. And then that's when you really will be at the mercy of price increases and price strategies and competitive pricing plans, you know, and it ends up the consumer paying more and more and more, even what they would do eventually when they go to the theatres. And that's one of the big worries that I have with this streaming initiative. The second as well, I think, concern is that really it's more about the HBO Max subscribers. If we're being brutally honest here, this isn't about benefiting the consumer. This isn't about trying to preserve the idea of cinematic releases or filmmaking. This is all about producing more subscribers for the HBO Max. I've mentioned many times, if we look at the HBO Max, they did a recent reporting of the figures that the streaming platform only garnered so far 8.6 million subscribers. Now, yes, we have to give some leeway because it's only been in existence for a short amount of time. But when you compare it to the other big platforms, of course, Netflix, the established one, having 170 million subscribers, and more recently and more relevant comparison will be the Disney Plus, and the fact that that currently sits at 73 million subscribers. Now, the big dilemma for the HBO Max is that they have a low subscriber amount and they have no fresh new content that really gets people excited for. The big hype content that they have right now is the Snyder Cut Justice League, and that's not coming out till way next year. And who knows if that gets delayed, if there are any issues within the post-production process, we don't know. But that will be way till next year. So right now, at this moment, HBO Max has no real fresh, new, exciting content to attract new subscribers. And this is a massive venture. As we all know, there have been multi-millions invested into these streaming platforms, and of course the people in charge at the top, AT&T or Warner Brothers, whoever's in charge, they want to see a direct return. You know, this is the whole problem when you initiate these massive platforms. They want to see instant results. They don't want to build and develop and let things take their course over a number of years. They want to see direct results now, particularly when you've got so many other competitors, Amazon, Hulu, Disney Plus, all gaining subscribers and producing content at a much more faster rate than you. Then that's going to make you more desperate to push out new content because you want to see your platform succeed more. And that's what I think the big issue is. Let's be honest, this is the reason why we're seeing the Snyder Cut. It wasn't to satisfy fans. It wasn't to do justice to Zack Snyder if they felt he was mistreated during the production of Justice League. It was all about gathering new subscribers because they didn't have enough content. And this is the same mindset that we're seeing here. They don't have a lot of new content to get people excited. So, and for me, this just screams more of desperation from Warner Brothers, because if they had a huge back catalogue of exciting new shows and content all scheduled for next year, all big event products that they were very confident would put in new subscribers, then they wouldn't feel the need to make this push in terms of the movies, right? If anything, they would be more patient because they would have the new shows to attract new subscribers, and then they could still hope that the theatres would open in some massive capacity in order for their theatrical releases to make big box office. But they don't have that scenario. If we compare to Disney Plus, who at the moment they have The Mandalorian as their main flagship show, but of course they have all of the MCU shows, right? So we have WandaVision, which is coming out I think later on this year or the beginning of next year. The Falcon and Winter Soldier has now finished filming, so they just have to complete now the post-production. And of course they have all the other shows: Hawkeye, Loki, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel. They've got all that other content to come, and Mandalorian as well has been commissioned already for season 3. So they've got plenty of new content brewing in the background for Disney Plus, so they can afford to be a bit more patient, because a lot of that content is of course integrated with the MCU, which for the last 10 to 12 years has been the biggest and most successful commercial genre, all of the entertainment industry. So they don't feel the need as such to push the button and force these movies onto the streaming platform, because they've got a lot of content coming very soon. So they feel a bit more secure not having to force these movies through. But HBO Max doesn't have that luxury, you see. So that's why they're pushing these movies forward and trying to really gain as many subscribers as possible. Now, I'm not trying to be overly negative here, and yes, you could say they will experience a spike in subscribers if you are releasing that amount of movies onto the streaming platform. And particularly, I'm looking at more the likes of The Matrix and the Godzilla vs. Kong and Dune. Those were really the big event films that I think a lot of people were looking forward to next year. So if you're going to release that amount of movies, then yes, people would get excited, and yes, they would adopt the £15 or $15 to watch those movies. They would. So yes, in the short term, you are going to see a huge spike in subscriber amounts. You are. That's just common sense. But as I've mentioned before, the other major concern with putting these movies onto streaming is that once you create that digital copy and you put it online, it becomes open to privacy. So even if you have a lot of people subscribe to the platform and they have access to these big releases, you're still going to have a lot of people who don't subscribe to HBO Max, and if they have the opportunity to obtain a pretty good standard copy of the movie online and can watch it for free, they're going to do that regardless of whatever extra perks or services that you get with subscribing to the platform. If people have the opportunity to get that copy of a big release movie for free rather than pay $14.99 to watch it, they're going to do that. So in a strange way, by putting all these movies on streaming, yes, you might get initial interest, but you losing money because you're not getting the theatrical profits. But then again, by being subject to privacy, you're still losing money anyway, because you're not going to get as many people subscribing to the platform because they're all going to be pirating anyway. So it's a big problem, and I think they're just pushing the button too quickly. I think, as I mentioned before, we've had reports, early signs, and it's still early signs, so not getting carried away here, of a vaccine emerging. And even if we do get a vaccine, it is going to take at least 7 to 8 months before we can start seeing a major distribution amongst the population. So it's still going to take some time. But what happens if next year, if we're sitting around, let's say July or August time, and theatres open up again to a massive capacity, and then we see the likes of Black Widow, Fast and Furious 9, No Time to Die all open, and there's a huge hype level because everybody is rushing now to watch these movies back in a big theatrical experience, and all of these movies make money, then what is Warner Brothers going to feel like? All of these movies that they put on streaming don't make the same bank of what the other movies do when they're released theatrically. Now, of course, they can revert back on this. So if we get early signs of a vaccine and people feel more secure about theatres and they open up again, yes, in theory, they can go back and say, well, we promised all these movies on a streaming platform, but now that theatres are open, we're not going to release them simultaneously with the HBO Max, and we're going to release them on theatres first and then make you wait 2 or 3 months before releases them on a streaming platform. They could very well do that. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. It wouldn't look very good from an image point of view to walk back on that initiative, but they could still do that if they wanted to. But I just think at the moment, I just think they're pressing the button too quickly, and they should just hold back on these releases, or some of them, and just wait and see what happens first in terms of theatres next year. Yes, there is the caveat of the fact that right now I believe HBO Max is primarily available in the US, so in terms of releasing these movies in other international territories, each country is going to have their own settings in terms of distribution and release and format. So if it can't be released on HBO Max in other international territories, will it then be sold off to other streaming platforms? So there is a bit of a caveat there as how these movies will be released in other international territories. But I think I'm just looking at the overall picture and realising that yes, this surely now will mean the beginning of the end of cinemas. When you have a bulk load of movies all going on a streaming platform, and once you cross that line, there's no going back. And as I mentioned before, if they continue to have big financial profit and success with the streaming movies, then they won't just go back to releasing them exclusively on theatres for a couple of months, because there'll be too much momentum, there'll be too many money being made and success being made, and it will just make going to the theatres redundant for the consumer. And as I mentioned, you would have conditioned audiences to get them used to just streaming these movies, that make going back to the cinema will just be a afterthought and nobody will bother doing it. And that's where I think the really biggest tragedy is that this is the beginning of the end now. If not the end, this is the beginning of the end. And if they have a huge success, maybe it's only a matter of time before we see Disney Plus adopt the same strategy, and the likes of the Phase 4 Marvel movies, Black Widow, Eternal, Shang-Chi, Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we will eventually see all of those movies also go through to the streaming platform along with what's happening with HBO Max. So I just think it's a bit of a shame, and it's more about desperation of getting new subscribers. And yeah, you don't want to really see that as a movie fan. You don't want to really see the end of the theatrical experience in sake of financial gain, or in sake of building more of a HBO Max streaming platform. But unfortunately, that is the reality, and that is, I think, the biggest consequence of this move, is that it's not to benefit cinema, it's not to really benefit the consumer as such. It's all about gaining more subscribers for your streaming platform, and this is the way that entertainment is going to be consumed, certainly in the next 5 to 10 years now. And it's going to be a huge streaming battle if this is successful for HBO Max and become a major player, and we're going to see more and more other streaming platforms adopting similar initiatives in order to become the top dog within the streaming platforms. And that's my concern, because that's where I think the moviegoer could suffer in terms of having to pay eventually more money to see these movies, and also at the same time lose out on the theatre going experience. So those are my thoughts on a very big and major news announcement of HBO Max announcing a huge slate of movies in 2021 to be simultaneously streamed on HBO Max and also released theatrically in theatres. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you believe will be the ramifications for this? Do you think cinemas will ever bounce back to some sort of normalcy if we get a vaccine released next year? And how do you think that will affect these releases going forward? Do you think it's a mistake from Warner Brothers? Do you think they're pushing the button too early, or do you think this is the right move and they really couldn't afford to wait any longer to sit on these movies, and they had to make a big move to release them now, especially when they had such a low amount of subscribers. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like and comment and hit that subscribe button to help me grow this channel and provide you with more high quality content in the long run. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.